Fireworks were launched over one majestic castle. At night, I heard footsteps in the corridor. Some strange voice said that it was quite rare to see such golden hair. The whispering continued. The voices were discussing a young girl with long, wheat-colored braids, whose name was Rosentine Argent. The girl, who was also tapping along the corridor at the time, turned around quite abruptly and unexpectedly. Frightened people were looking at her, a man and a woman whose voices had been heard before. The young woman turned to the man and woman and nervously reminded them that she had asked them not to talk to her in the palace. They replied that this was an outrage because they were members of the imperial family. They also noted that the girl was not well-mannered, and they did not expect such behavior from the daughter of the one, Argina. These strange people suggested that the blonde girl was a witch because she could see them. Then the woman with the fan shouted to the girl that she was so unhappy and would be executed if caught. She also suggested that her mother Violetta had raised her daughter poorly, and now she was paying the price. Rosenthal rather rudely told the two to shut up and that she had no intention of talking to ghosts. She also ordered them to leave immediately. The ghosts began to retreat. Then the heroine turned around and calmly walked back. She knew the story very well and was disgusted by it. It turns out that magic is banned in this country. Many years ago, the Cartesian Empire was founded, which united the continent of Akron and was the main one above all. But even the so-called Golden Empire had bad times. The land suffered from tsunamis, heavy rains, and drought. People were dying of the plague. All of this was accompanied by an abnormal climate in these areas. It was as if the empire was cursed. It was then that the maritime kingdom of Bishuteyan emerged. They used the popular unrest, which was popular at that difficult time, to their advantage and propagated the revolution. Bishuteyan did everything to make the kingdom of Cartesian disappear. After all, then all the power in this place would have passed to them. But suddenly, disasters stopped happening on the continent of Africa, which suffers from constant disasters. The emperor spoke to the people and assured them that such an unbearable life was arranged for them by the descendants of the spellcasters who had been their enemies before the creation of the Cartesian Empire. So he issued an order banning all magic except official magic. All those who honor paganism will be punished. Rosentine Argan was well aware of the centuries-old story that the maritime kingdom of Bishuteyan was doing everything possible to overthrow the Cartesian Empire, and they were hiding behind the alleged rescue of people from disaster. But her empire was still able to resist, regain power after a while, and is still thriving today. The people who helped Cartesian to be founded and to survive were the honored, resourceful Arjun and mighty Hazenstu. They were the backbone and support for the Golden Empire. Rosentine Argan was born in the Duchy of Inventive Argan. She had many talents and characteristics, but was doomed to see ghosts. This was her terrible curse. At the same time, the heroine remembers all the moments of her life in South Korea, where her name was Yoon Seol-woo. Nowadays, the girl's appearance and environment have changed, but her abilities remain with her. She dreamed of living her present life in peace. The blonde beauty also noted that the main characters of novels usually miss their past lives, but this does not concern her at all. From time to time, the girl's thoughts were interrupted by a creak outside the door. Rosenthal admits to herself that she is ready to accept any life and world. She is sure that they will be better than the hell she experienced in Yoon Seol-woo's body. She recalls her past life, which was like an endless race where she couldn't stop for a minute. Everything seems to have been fine then, but the girl could see ghosts from birth. And then it became a problem, because people do not accept those who are somehow different from them. All this is recalled by the heroine in another life. She painfully recalls that her family was no exception. She did not receive any support from them, but on the contrary. Eventually, her relatives took her in. That's why she was able to go to high school. At school, an elderly teacher asked her about her parents, their relationship, and whether she hated them. The girl said no. She shared that it was hard for her mother to raise her alone. But instead, she noticed a lack of attention to her story and asked the teacher if she was ready to listen. The current heroine sadly continues to say that in her past life, she wanted understanding from others. But this was not the case. So after a while, she began to understand everything. Everyone whispered behind the girl's back. Cruel people called her strange and said she saw ghosts and talked to them. It seemed gloomy to people. Some people did not believe that she really saw ghosts and said that she wanted to draw attention to herself in this way. And some admitted that she warned them to be careful on their way home, as if she saw some danger. It was hard for the heroine because of the attitude of others towards her. She compares it to wounds, of which there were more and more. And in this endless pursuit, she was constantly falling. Her wounds hurt, but she never cried. She simply had no one to cry to. So Yoon Seol-woo had to get up and experience it on her own. The heroine's relatives were worried that she would have a bad influence on Ji-won, because she clearly has problems with her studies. They wanted to get rid of her as soon as possible, and were waiting for her to finish high school. One day, she even overheard that she was supposed to die on the street, and they sheltered her for free, so she should be grateful to them. The voices of the ghosts she often heard told her that no one wanted to be with her and called her to go with them. But Yoon Seol-woo valued life too much, so none of this could affect her mood. She considered herself lucky no matter what, because she could survive. She reassured herself that everything was fine, and she would be able to defend herself without any help. She believed she could withstand everything. But one day in December, when she was only 20 years old, it suddenly came to an end. Now she recalls that at the moment of her senseless death, she realized something. Until that terrible moment, she did not realize how tired she really was. When the end of her life came, poor Yoon Seol-woo was even glad that she no longer had to run so endlessly. Suddenly, these thoughts were interrupted, and she opened her eyes. She saw an unfamiliar ceiling and sunlight through the window. There is also a young flowering garden and a clear stream. She saw it as another chance for rebirth and life that God had given her. The man and woman turned to her and called her Rose. They were surprised that she was here all this time. The parents held up a small wrapped baby named Yoon Seol-woo in the past, now Rosentine, for her to come over and look at the baby. They explained that it was her younger sister named Court. The heroine looks confused. There is a warm wind blowing now, which indicates that spring is approaching, and she doesn't quite understand where she is and what is happening, as if she has a new beautiful life. But she realizes that one day winter will come again. Therefore now, for the sake of a new beautiful life, she has no right to give up. Rose recalls how in that past life she was constantly falling, but getting up and moving on, wounded. So now, even if this feeling of happiness is short-lived, she is determined to get up and do everything she can to protect this world. On that day, the Imperial Palace hosted a trumpet festival. It may seem strange, but not only living aristocrats, but also the dead were present at the celebration. Rosenthal decided that she needed to be careful enough to avoid being noticed by others. At first glance, ghosts look no different from others, but people who know better will understand. The girl believed that she had to prevent anyone from seeing her talking to ghosts, because then her whole family might suffer. By the way, when she looked at the door, she remembered an unpleasant moment that happened to her 9 years ago. When her younger sister Court was 10 years old and Rosenthal was 16, they stood in front of the magnificent Lenstow Palace in the capital of the Cartesian Empire. Court said with delight that everything here was so majestic. In response, the older sister kindly told the little girl that she should behave quietly and well-mannered in such a palace. She then asked where Court would like to start surveying the area. She was confused and thought about it. The girl said that she had already seen the garden, so she dreams of getting inside the palace. But there were always ghosts around. They said it was a great choice. Rose hugged her sister and told the ghosts to leave quickly. She threatened them so they wouldn't dare scare Court. The heroine recalls that she started seeing ghosts from the time she was born. Her past life experiences showed her what can happen if you show ghosts that you can see them. So she decided to live her life without noticing them. She managed to do so for a while, but only until she turned 9. That day, she and her father came to the Imperial Palace and saw her mother faint, and all the ghosts around her were talking about her illness. The family members said that Miss Arjun became seriously ill after giving birth to her second daughter and has been fighting the disease for a year. I heard a voice mockingly say that it would soon be her turn. The little girl heard that her mother had 6 months left at best. It was painful for her to hear this, and she cried. That day, she decided that it would be better if she hadn't heard anything. The ghosts were very surprised and wondered how this child could hear them. After that, they started talking to her. Rosentine mentally regretted going to this imperial palace, which is simply teeming with ghosts. Then she suggested that Court go and see the ballroom. Little Court liked the idea and looked happy because she would soon grow up and start attending balls. As soon as they got inside, Court disappeared from Rose's sight. She started calling out to her. The heroine instantly had a bad feeling. She was worried that something bad could happen to her sister. She turned back and saw the door, which surprised her because she hadn't noticed it before. The door creaked open, and Rose found herself in the room. she noticed a ghostly man standing behind the little girl. Court was sitting on the floor and begging her sister to help her. She said excitedly that she was scared. Rosenthal did not know what to do to save her sister. There was a ghost nearby, but for some reason without a face. This seemed strange to my older sister, and she tried to think of something. The character was worried that Court might be mistaken for a witch. She promised her sister that she would do anything to save her. Then she hurried off somewhere. On the way, she met a mysterious young man who was trembling a little and looking her straight in the eye. He asked the girl who she should look for. Rosenthal looked at him in disgust. She wanted to know whether he was a trigger or a person, but at the same time she recommended that he get out. The stranger looked down and told the girl to come to her senses. Rose was very angry at the young man's treatment of her. At the same time, he hinted to her that if someone found out, her sister could die. The young girl took a swing at the boy and nervously started shouting that Court would not die and that it was forbidden to even think about it. At the same time, she was seriously scared. She had a beloved family that she could never have dreamed of before. Therefore, her younger sister is more precious to her than her own life. The heroine cried in despair. 6 years ago, she had already lost her mother. Therefore, she simply cannot lose her sister now. The young ghost offered Rosentine to go with him on the Roku and assured the excited girl that he could help her. Rose started shouting that such jokes were not appropriate now. Instead, the boy hastened to remind her that there was a faceless ghost near Court, which was the most dangerous. He emphasized that it turns out that her sister has a body that is a bait for such vile ghosts. The girl asked if he could really save Court. The stranger replied that he knew a way to do it. He also offered to help Rose in the future, if she so desired. The heroine hesitated whether she could trust him, but I realized that she had no other choice, so I asked him what he wanted in return. The guy mysteriously replied that he wanted her to fulfill his dream when the time came. Rosenthal looked confused and did not know what to say, and he reassured her that she would never regret her choice. At the end of the conversation, he asked her to memorize his name. His name was Rannon. After such an unexpected meeting with Ran, the heroine has many questions, but she turned around and ran back down the stairs. Rose ran back into the room where Court was. She hugged her tightly and apologized because the child must have been very scared. The elder sister hugged and reassured the younger one. She then turned to Rannon and asked what she should do next and how. He admitted that many ghosts live in the imperial palace, but he promised to tell her a way to manage them. He went on to add that all it takes is a name. He explained that the name is the weak point of ghosts because it binds even a dead person to this world. And knowing him, she will be able to do anything with them, whether to order them or simply expel them. The topic of ghost management was of great interest to Rosenthal, but she had doubts about her ability to do it. Rannon tried to further interest the girl. He said that she was the only one who could see them, so she should try to gain power over the ghosts. He voiced the name of the first creature, the one that was hovering over Little Court. His name was Hasten Cartizan. Rosenthal was surprised to hear this famous name. It turns out that he was a member of the imperial family. She wondered under what circumstances he had become an evil spirit and was now moving freely through the corridors of the palace. Rannon began to instruct Rose how she should act. She simply needs to say his name and order him to do what she now desires. As she continued to hug Court, she thought that she had no right to sit and do nothing. She decided that she had to do everything she could. Rose once again apologized to her younger sister for her recklessness and assured her that she would save her under any circumstances. She recalled the sweet moments when Court was first born, so she swore that as long as her sister needed her help, she would always be her guardian angel. Then she asked Court to open her eyes, because she had to start interacting with ghosts. Rosentine shouted in a confident voice that she was Rosentine Argan and ordered Hasten Cartizan to return her sister, and he has to do it this very minute. As Rannon said earlier, the evil spirit quickly disappeared and the sisters were left alone. The following is a story that happened on the eve of the debutante ball, where Court was also present. There were also ghosts who made fun of people, especially the young heroine. They were amused that she was making such a ridiculous face. One man turned to Mr. Fisher and told him that he shouldn't laugh at miserable people. Rannon was also among the ghosts, but others spoke of him as a good-looking but slightly unintelligent young man. The heroine reveals Rannon's secret that he deliberately pretends to be a fool in front of the ghosts of the imperial palace, but she didn't understand why he was doing it. Rosentine postponed the debutante ball for a long time to protect Court and further prepare for a possible meeting with those creatures. She remembered the day she gave the order to the ghost. Such an action was regarded as witchcraft, which was forbidden in Cartezan. But still, something was bothering her. She recalled how Ranon assured her that he could help her because he knew the names of all the deceased in this palace. How can a young man know all this, and why does he talk about it so easily? Rose thought that there were some contradictory things going on in the palace, because it was strange that a member of the imperial family, who was undoubtedly blessed, had become an evil spirit. The heroine thought with despair that she could not escape her fate. She wanted so much to live a normal, peaceful life, but now she needs a ghost to save court. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a door opening and a voice introducing His Highness Chartis Cartezan, who was the second prince of the Cartezan Empire. The guests instantly paid attention to him and began whispering. Rosenthal saw the prince for the first time and realized why there was so much talk about him. Chartis Cartezan had a perfect appearance, was intelligent and good with a sword, and was almost perfect in everything. There were even rumors about him that evil fate loves him and avoids him. The heroine reminded herself that she had already had relations with him once, and she did not want to deal with the imperial family again. The ghosts have always been there. Even here, at the ball, they never left Rosenthal's side. The voices asked if she liked Prince Chartis and seemed to regretfully inform her that he was cursed. She promised herself that she would ignore them, but she couldn't keep quiet. She asked about the prejudices they talk about so often. In response, I heard ridicule again. She also learned that the curse of the Cartezan imperial family really exists. There are even rumors that the crown prince is bedridden. It all seems strange. But there were cases in history when, in one generation, alongside one prominent member of the imperial family, there was another representative who was on the heels of death. Rosenthal reassured herself that anything goes in life. And there is definitely something true in this situation, because Crown Prince Esvar disappeared from public life due to health problems. Esvar and Chartis were brothers, and the bond between them was quite strong. So much so that any struggle for inheritance and the throne was simply impossible. That is why, when Chartis became commander of the Imperial Guard, he refused the throne. But it is also known that their ideal relationship went sour a year ago when Esvar suddenly fell ill. Then gossip began to spread among the aristocrats. So the advisor turned to Chartis and told him that he needed to tell people something to refute all the rumors, such as that the aristocrats were coming under the rule of the second prince. The second prince said he would step down as commander of the Knights Guard. Rosenthal concluded that all of this has led to this mess that is happening now. But she wondered what the crown prince thought about all this. Meanwhile, the ghost did not leave her alone. The woman nervously asked why she was not listening to her and threatened that she might regret her indifference. Soon, Rose will hear information that will unpleasantly surprise her. The ghost said that the prince would die soon. The girl asked if she meant Chartis. The ghostly woman with the fan smiled with satisfaction, for she had succeeded in attracting Rosenthal's attention. She went on to say that the glass was poisoned and someone was going to replace it with Prince's glass. After hearing this, the heroine quickly turned around and started running. After all, an assassination attempt on a member of the imperial family was about to take place. Rosenthal found Ranon and asked him excitedly if what she had just learned was true. He recommended that she ask the woman herself. Then he whispered in the girl's ear that the ghost woman's name was Gertrude. Rose ran back down the hall and started calling for Gertrude. The ghost did not understand how the young lady knew her name. Rosenthal asked her menacingly if what she said was true and promised that she would regret it if she lied. The woman with the fan mentally noted that the girl had character. She said that she personally witnessed an unfamiliar man and a maid secretly talking near the clock tower. The ghost admitted that at first she secretly spied on them because she thought they were having a secret love affair. But then I heard them talking. The man ordered the maid to replace the second prince's wineglass at the ball. He said that if she did everything according to the instructions, there would be no problems. The stranger told the worker not to ask questions, but to do as he said. He added that if she wanted to save her life, Rosenthal was frightened by this story, but she hoped that it was just a wineglass swap. It was too early to talk about poisoning. The ghost immediately denied that there was something else. She said that Sir Humpty also saw this stranger meeting with a maid pouring alcohol. He, too, received an order to add poison to the wineglass of a member of the imperial family. The girl had no more questions, and the ghost saw it in her face, which gave her great satisfaction, because she had finally managed to convince her. It was a common scheme in robbery. The demand from bribed people is minimal because they will know nothing more than the order they have received. In this world, where investigation using scientific methods is not yet developed, it is quite difficult to find a customer. Rosentine began to worry about what would happen to the empire if the prince died. She caught herself thinking, why should she care? She decided that the empire would continue to exist and would find a replacement for the manager. The woman with the fan smilingly said that the girl now had no doubts, because the day when the prince would die was near. But then something happened that made the ghost woman angry again. Instead of listening to her, Rosenthal turned around and started running again. As Rose was running, she asked herself if she was ready to go there, because it could cost her life. At the same time, there was to be an assassination attempt on a member of the imperial family, and this is no joke. The heroine once again reminded herself that she only wanted to live in peace, protecting her family. Running on a dark night under the empire moon, she began to remember how she had gotten lost in an unknown palace as a little girl. While wandering around the area, she ran into a guy. He was the second prince of Chartis Cartizan. He was an extremely sweet and handsome young man. Rosenthal looked at him and compared him to a doll created by the Lord God with special love. He was also interested in a strange girl and asked her who she was. He compared it to an angel. Little Rose remembered that she had to go back to her father. She hoped that nothing terrible would happen if she was a little late. She confidently decided to take her time because she has always been attracted to everything cute, and this boy was no exception. The boy and girl continued to approach each other. Rose was the first to extend her hand and say her name was Rosenthal. She also asked what the boy's name was. The prince was embarrassed and asked what she was doing. Then the heroine realized that this world probably doesn't know about handshakes. She began to explain that it was just a gesture of welcome, meaning that she wanted to be friends with him. Rose asked if they didn't know about such rules of etiquette in Cartizan. She added that where she grew up, everyone said hello like that. The guy was surprised. The acquaintance and friendly greeting did take place. In his defense, the prince said that he was quite weak and could not go out often, so he might not know what was happening outside. The young man began to apologize with regret that he had been impolite to his new friend. Rosenthal replied that he had nothing to apologize for, because it was not his fault. The prince looked at her sweetly, and she continued to assure him that he simply did not know about such rules of etiquette, but now he would. The prince smiled and agreed. He said the girl was very attentive. Rose mentally noted that when he smiled, he became even more handsome. Then he asked permission to thank the girl according to the rules of etiquette he was familiar with. It was a sudden, unexpected meeting, but Rosenthal still remembers it and that simple, sweet boy who was actually a member of the imperial family. Finally, in the end, the young man introduced himself and said his name was Shat. He asked his new friend if she would come to see him again. Back in reality, Rosenthal hears voices. They tell her that even if she tries to hide from the world by closing her eyes and ears, it will still exist without her. But at the same time, she realizes that dealing with the imperial family is extremely dangerous. The heroine figured out that Chartis Cartizan was a direct representative of the imperial family who had great power. Therefore, if the secret is revealed, she and court may be burned at the stake. But on the other hand, it could be her chance. The thought occurred to her that it could be a life for a life. The heroine has to save the prince in time. He will probably be her debtor after that. But she will be able to ask him for a guarantee that she and her family will be safe. The heroine runs barefoot and gets lost in the countryside. She looks very frightened because she realizes that she is in an unfamiliar village, and this is definitely not the capital. The girl is at a loss to know where she is. Rosenthal hears some bumping sounds around her, and she feels cold. But even in such a stressful situation, she thinks of her family first. Then a terrible flame engulfs everything around. The girl sees her house burning, so she shouts loudly for someone to save her house and family. She quickly threw herself into the fire and begged for help to pull her sister out. While Rose was hysterically knocking on the door of the burning house, she noticed that she had some feelings inside her that were not hers. But then who owns them? And the voices around her kept telling her to save her instead. So the girl, rejecting doubts and fear, began to act decisively on her own without waiting for help. Finally, a sunny morning came and the birds sang through the window. Rosentine woke up in the luxurious palace, but noted that sleeping here was rather disturbing. To prepare for the case, she asked the ghosts what they knew about the second prince. The girl shook the frightened ghost, and the latter assured her that she had told everything she knew about him. Rosenthal wandered around the palace for several days in order to meet the prince by chance. Finally, today is the day of the decisive battle. But the main thing is not to show your true face and essence. Rosenthal was worried that the clothes she chose might look strange in broad daylight. And according to ghost stories, you can expect anything from a prince. Renan told her what he had overheard. He had heard that the second prince was to leave the capital in a few days by carriage to conclude a secret agreement with the county of Hermann. The heroine was hesitant about what would happen if she failed to realize her plan. It could cost her life, and not only her, but she instantly calmed herself down because she had a reliable trump card up her sleeve. She didn't have much time left, so today was her only chance to meet the prince without revealing who she really was. The heroine thought of everything in advance. She even drank a special potion to change her voice. All that remained was to meet the second prince. Rosentine hid around a corner and heard hoofbeats. Something was approaching her. Finally, a carriage appeared, and it turned out that it was Chartis Kartazin who was in it. The girl was very surprised, because she was looking for a carriage with the imperial coat of arms, and he was just riding in such a nice carriage. Therefore, she concluded that he had obvious problems with his own safety. Rose stood there and encouraged herself. She told herself to act and not to hesitate, because there was not much time. Finally, she moved and looked up. The girl appealed to the heavens for her mother to protect and help her from there. It was time to act, and she hurriedly threw herself right under the wheels of the carriage. The carriage stopped in time at the last seconds, and Rosenthal realized that she was saved and alive. The angry and frightened man started shouting and calling her crazy. He said that if she wanted to die, she should have chosen another way, but not to throw themselves under the wheels of the crew of the imperial family. Rose remained silent and assessed the person sitting in front of her. He was a blond man with bright brown eyes. She guessed that it was Chartis's loyal dog named Hostin Mifflet. The girl began to apologize and said that she could not see anything at all in front of her, but she inadvertently asked if His Highness himself was in the carriage. Hostin was embarrassed and began to threaten the girl to shut up and not ask such questions. The heroine thought to herself that this fool had told her that it was an imperial carriage, but of course she did not say it out loud. She had a different task. She had to make the prince get out of the carriage. She knew from the stories that the second prince was famous for his prudence. That's why he won't just show up at night. On the contrary, she thought, it could harm her, and she would ruin everything by being too hasty. Ranel had previously warned her about such nuances, so he told her in advance that there was still one way to lure him out. We should call him a golden descendant. He added that the prince hates this expression. She asked what the reason was, but was told that there was no specific reason. The heroine decided to give it a try. She fell to the ground and began to bow and pray to the prince. At the same time, she called him a golden offspring and thanked him as if he were the Lord. His humble servant reprimanded the girl and asked her to stop. At this time, everyone heard the carriage door creak. The second prince appeared, and the man hastened to reassure His Highness. Chartis asked what all the fuss was about, addressing Kostan. The girl was secretly happy that she had managed to lure the prince away. She recalled that this was their third meeting. She also thought to herself that she liked his handsome face, but it is enough to call it golden. Kostan began to explain to His Highness that the old woman had suddenly run out onto the road, right under the wheels of the carriage. The girl began to justify herself by saying that she had committed a mortal sin, but she simply did not know who was riding in the carriage. The men listened attentively as Rosenthal apologized to them. She skillfully acted and said that the Lord God himself had led her to meet the prince. Rose also added that she had been waiting to meet him for a long time and asked him to meet the old woman halfway. The girl began to prophesy that she saw the moon of the empire suffering from fear every night, and the reason is not his brother's serious illness, nor is this fear due to the ice storm that comes every winter. Chartis listened attentively. The old woman said that the reason was the westerly wind that brought the bad news. She added, personally addressing His Highness, that the golden eagle hides vigilance. The prince was silent, and Rose continued to manipulate. She admitted that she is now by his side because a dangerous shadow is overtaking him. The girl bowed and asked for permission to help him. Chartis thought about it and asked the stranger what she was up to. It was then that she realized that the golden eagle had really helped her. Without revealing her face, the heroine said that her body was weak, but her eyes and ears could still see and hear well. She added that she has discovered things that others do not notice. The prince asked if she was a fortune teller. Rosenthal said that she used to be called that, but to be precise, she can only see ghosts. She also added that she could see death hanging over His Highness right now. Kostan wanted to interrupt the stranger, but the second prince stopped him. The girl assured Shardus that she could drive away the shadow of death from him if he trusted her. The prince waved his hand and mockingly said that the girl was too self-confident, and this surprises him a lot. He went on to say that these were just words, and she herself will be accused of attempted murder of a member of the imperial family if she cannot prove everything she has just said. He also asked if she didn't value her life. Rosenthal thought to herself that she knew what she was doing, that it would not be easy to negotiate with the prince. She replied that she agreed to everything. The girl was not confused and continued acting. She said that her meeting with the prince was the will of God, and even if she endangers herself and her family in this way, she saves His Highness. According to her, whether or not Chardas Cardassian lives or dies will determine whether the Cardassian Empire continues to exist. Kostan lost his temper and began to shout, "How could this stranger say such things to His Highness?" The fact was that in Cardassian, members of the imperial family were equated with divine creatures, and it was quite strange for everyone that some old witch would dare to predict the fate of an entire empire. Rose predicted that right now they could cut off her head, and even no one would take her side. On the one hand, of course, she was afraid, but on the other hand, she realized that there was nowhere to retreat. The humble servant once again began to recommend to His Highness that he should not listen to what this crazy old woman had to say. To his surprise, the prince sharply denied the allegations and said that all of them were true, and he added that it was all said by the sorcerer. He was wondering what made this woman risk her safety so much, but at the same time, he admitted that he was interested in her story. After hearing this, the heroine was surprised, because she had already heard about Shardus and his source of demonic attraction. The conversation between the young people continued. The prince expressed interest in how a stranger could have so much patriotism. Kostan was not happy about what was happening, and Rosenthal mentally noted that Chardas was much nicer as a child. The girl said she could explain everything. She admitted that the shadow of death hanging over His Highness meant that he was in some kind of danger. She added that she could not say more. The prince was surprised and asked why she wouldn't tell them anything else. Rosenthal said that the shadow of death is just a clue to what will happen in the future. And to find out more, it is necessary to put together all the signs that His Highness will see around him about the events of the future into one picture. Shardus could not stand it and asked what she was offering. The stranger said that she was quite old and had difficulty moving, but she added that, with the prince's permission, she would like to place her granddaughter, who also has witchcraft powers, under his protection. The second man immediately blurted out that she was ready to sell her own grandson for the sake of deception. The old lady bowed and expressed confidence that this would not harm her granddaughter at all. She promised that the girl would be able to read all the necessary signs and make a complete picture, because she had an even greater gift than her grandmother. She added that this is exactly the role of this child. She will be able to help predict the future and prevent a disaster from coming to the prince. Then the events moved to the Duchy of Argon. The moaning sounds of Rosenthal were heard. The maids helped her take off her tightly worn corset, which made her overjoyed. The maid reassured her that she would not need to wear it again for a while. The girl asked if the letter had been sent to her father. The maid replied that she had already sent it to the Duke. She clarified that as of today, the younger lady is officially undergoing treatment in Birdan, and everything has been agreed with the villa's caretaker. The lady was satisfied with the answer and approved everything. She ordered the maids to look after the estate in her absence, as her father would be busy. Rose also mentioned her younger sister Court. At the same second, she heard her calling out to her in a nervous voice. Court ran into the room and looked quite excited. The lady said she would explain everything to her. The little girl was screaming that how could her older sister do this to her? Why is she leaving today for a whole month, and she's only finding out about it now? Rose tried to calm her down and looked for excuses. Little Court had tears in her eyes, but she insisted on an explanation from her sister. Rosenthal hugged the girl and began to apologize. She said that circumstances had arisen, and she had to leave immediately. But perhaps she will return sooner than a month. She hugged her tightly and asked Court to write her letters as often as possible. The lady also asked her maids to look after the girl in her absence and make sure she didn't get lonely. She warned them to prevent Court from visiting the imperial palace. Rosenthal put on a wig and was getting ready for important things. She was surprised because she had not expected such drastic changes, but it was for the best. The girl was happy with her new look, and I decided that the magic is still working even now. She smiled slyly and began to decide where the traveler Roan should go. Therefore, it was decided to go and lift the veil of conspiracy. When Rosenthal was still an old woman on the road, a humble servant of Prince Hostin told her that her granddaughter should come to the prince's remote palace in the west of the capital. So one night, granddaughter Roan secretly knocked on the door of the estate. The door creaked open, and the girl found herself inside. She greeted me and said her name was Roan. In response, she heard that she could come in. The prince said he had heard that she was able to help him. Roan nodded affirmatively. His Highness looked thoughtful, and it was clear that something was bothering him. Then he blurted out rather rudely that first there was an old woman and now an immature chick. These words unpleasantly shocked the girl. Although Roan was angry, because the age difference between them was not so significant, she forced herself to remain calm. She apologized in advance for what she was going to say. The girl said that she saw nothing wrong with being young. The prince carefully studied and listened to the guest. Kostan, who was nearby, noted that this young man was behaving rather impudently. Prince Chardas ordered her to sit down and said that she was thinking like her grandmother. The girl humbly sat down and clarified that her grandmother had raised her. She was worried that if she followed the rules of etiquette, it wouldn't fit with the image of a witch. So she decided that she needed to be more relaxed. His Highness told Roan that he was in a hurry that night on the road, so he let her grandmother go. The heroine realized that he had done it on purpose, because he did not want to deal with her in the very center of the city, where there were many witnesses. The girl said she understood how difficult it was for him to trust them now. Roan was nervous about making a mistake and saying something unnecessary in her conversation with His Highness. But at the same time, she carefully added that if he called her here, he believed her grandmother's words and listened to them. Chardas realized that a conspiracy was being woven around him. He listened attentively to the story of what Roan had learned. She told us what she had learned from the ghosts the day before, namely the letter sent by Count Almat. He was the head of the aristocrats of the Crown Prince's faction, and at the same time the main opponent of the second Prince Chartus in politics. The ghost woman with the fan, who told this information, was herself alarmed, because it was quite strange that the enemy Almat would send a letter asking about his well-being. She also said that it was Count Almat who brought the maid she had been watching to the palace. In a conversation with the ghosts before going to see the prince, Roan wished to know the contents of the letter in advance, because it would have helped her a lot. But the ghosts said that they could not open the letters, and made a remark to the girl, because she should know this. So now she thought about it, and decided that it was for the best that she could not discuss the contents of the letter, because it would have aroused suspicion, but she still needs to read it. Roan stood up and confidently told the prince and Kostan that in His Highness's study, behind the eagle statue in the third drawer of the bookcase on the right, there was a letter from Almat. The men listened attentively. She assured me that it was the first piece of the puzzle to complete the picture. Chardas thought about it and asked if she was sure. The heroine again said with confidence and firmness that confidence had nothing to do with it. She realized all this when she entered the palace, because her own life and the lives of her family members were at stake. The second prince believed the girl and agreed with her words. He offered to make a deal and asked what she wanted. Roan thought to herself that what she wanted most of all was to save her life. That is, the lives of Rosentine and all the members of the Argent family. But of course, she couldn't say it out loud now. So I simply said that it would be a life-for-life deal. The heroine also asked that the prince promise that after all this is over, the imperial family of Cartizan will not learn the details, and the girl's family will not suffer because of her witchcraft. In response, the prince recalled that her grandmother, on the contrary, wanted to help the imperial family, but now he observes that his granddaughter has completely different motives. The girl asked a provocative question: where did the prince see unselfish people in this world? The heroine trusted her intuition, which confidently told her that Chardas Cartizan would not refuse. Finally, he said he agreed. The heroine couldn't hide her joy because she managed to convince him. The men were confused and a little embarrassed by what they heard next. Roan offered to draw up a contract. The heroine was worried that something bad and unpredictable might happen to her when it was over. So I decided to take care of my safety in advance. She realized that she knew too much. And if the prince finds out that she is actually Rosentine Argent, he will definitely want to get rid of her. That's why it needs a guarantee. Chardas replied that he wanted to clarify something first. He was worried that her confidence might be a kind of reckless courage. Therefore, the man warned the girl that the success of this case depends on the lives of not only her family. The The heroine herself realized that she could easily be disposed of if something went wrong. So I read the prince's thoughts in advance. Shardus added that she would also die if she made a mistake, so he suggested that we think it over again and run away before it was too late. The girl thought about the offer to run away, but at the same moment, she realized that she had nowhere to run. She also recalled that she had already tried to run away from life. Roan summoned all her will and replied that she hoped the prince would appreciate her help. After all, she has come here now to protect His Highness. She also added that the deal meant that they both put their lives on the line. The heroine had a major card up her sleeve that she hadn't yet revealed to the prince: an attempt to poison him. The ghost told her that as many as 3 plots were being prepared in the palace. The girl realized that if the enemies failed to kill the second prince the first time, they would have 2 more attempts to do so. She wondered who wanted him dead so badly. Shardus asked the guest how she was so sure that he could die. Roan replied to His Highness that he knew all this much better than she did. She clarified that everyone knows, including the prince, that there are many people in the imperial palace who want him dead. In response, the prince admitted that he was surprised by one detail. Usually wizards, who are banned in Cartizan, hide from the imperial family. And Roan's grandmother deliberately threw herself under the wheels of Shardus's carriage. He continued to think that his granddaughter was completely different. Shardus asked if she was not afraid of him at all, and suggested that she might know much more than she was telling him. He added that this is why she is behaving so defiantly. Without expecting it, the girl suddenly fell to the floor. Rosenthal noticed that her legs were weak for no reason, so she decided that there was a bad aura. She looked at the prince, who stood there with an unwavering gaze, and guessed that he was testing her in this way. The heroine struggled to get to her feet, and sharply said that if her husband suspected her of being a spy, he was deeply mistaken. The prince pretended to agree with her statement, but he did not say it sincerely at all. Shardus added that, as she wished, they are now connected. He told her not to forget about her family. Rosenthal mentally noted that she had figured it out a long time ago. She said out loud that she would do whatever His Highness wanted. Then the prince sharply pushed the girl and ordered her to move away. Rose leaned over in surprise and was at a loss to understand what had just happened. She suggested that His Highness was in a bad mood. Shardus remained unflappable and merely noted that this Roan was too strange. The atmosphere between the young people remained tense. The heroine mentally characterized the prince once again and thought that being handsome was not enough. It was time to sign the contract. His Highness was informed that everything had already been prepared for this event. Hostin received the order to start and coughed to clear his throat. The assistant began to read out the details of the contract and named the parties to the document Roan and the second prince, Shardus. The girl interrupted and asked me to change it to parties. She went on to clarify that His Highness was the first party and she was the second. According to her, these are the designations used by traders in the Hockton district in the north. The girl added that she had also used such words. Of course, Rosenthal prepared for everything in advance. The day before, the ghost told her that according to the Hodden law, a person's name changes every 33 years, so they are not written in the contracts. So the girl took this into account, because it was to her advantage if she hid her name. The faithful dog Hostin, who was writing the document, asked what the terms of the agreement would be. The heroine began to set her own conditions. The first thing she asked for was that after she had taken His Highness out of danger, she would be guaranteed protection of her life. The prince agreed. The second thing she added was that her family would not suffer from the fact that she had some unusual strength and capabilities. Shardus was surprised and clarified that all her conditions were for the safety of her family. He agreed again. The girl sighed with relief that they had agreed on everything so easily. After all, problems could have arisen if he had interrogated further. His Highness asked Costan to present the document. The heroine suddenly stopped the action and asked to add one more item. The men froze, waiting for information. The girl confidently said that according to the new conditions, Roan would not have to serve at night. Hostin, who was usually nervous, started shouting this time. "What the hell is she up to?" The heroine was worried that there might be some completely different moments between them, not working ones. She tried to clarify. The fact was that His Highness is by nature a very handsome and prominent man, so she immediately wanted to discuss these issues. The girl blushed at this revelation. The second prince laughed and said he didn't know what to say in his defense. But then he added in a nervous voice that this was nonsense. Then he decided to make concessions, but he did not sincerely order Costan to add such a clause. Rosenthal was angered by the prince's reaction because everyone knows about his love affairs. A carriage with a crew enters a majestic courtyard. It was the Imperial Lenstor Palace, located in the center of the country. Chartis and Roan were riding in the carriage. Chartis suggested that this would probably be the first time the girl would be in the palace. Roan lied that it was her first time in such a majestic place, and said with admiration that it looked so big and beautiful. The prince was very pleased that he managed to impress the girl, and the heroine realized this and decided that she would continue to play along if he was so pleased. While they were driving, the girl remembered that she had once thought his face was so angelic, but now she thought quite the opposite. Now she compares him to a demon who bewitches people and then takes over their souls. The heroine also mentally noted that the demon himself would probably be fascinated by his appearance. Looking out the carriage window, Rosenthal saw several ghosts in the courtyard. She wondered if they recognized her. The ghost woman began to stare at the girl's face and thought she had seen her somewhere before. Then the woman and the man of the ghost decided that it was just a new maid who had arrived at the palace. The Imperial Palace used to be a place where looks make all the difference. That's why Rosenthal was worried that someone would recognize her, the daughter of the Argent family, as a simple girl. She was reassured by the fact that she would now be officially listed as Chartis's servant. This will open up many opportunities for her, but at the same time, it will probably not go unnoticed by others. The heroine realized that a new stage in her life was about to begin and was ready for anything. A few days later, an unpleasant situation occurred that slightly spoiled Rosenthal's mood. She was severely reprimanded by Maureen, who was a loyal servant of the imperial family. She asked why the new maid was so lazy and didn't fulfill her direct duties. The heroine was mentally angry and tried to control herself. She thought that she was not a maid at all, but a hired detective, but of course she could not say so. Maureen pushed the washing barrel with clothes and ordered the girl to start working. She also added that she had to work for her. Of course, Rosenthal knew how to do household chores because she had done them all the time in her previous life. But she was very angry now because she shouldn't have been in this situation at all. She recalled a dialogue between her and Chartis 2 days ago when the prince personally offered to introduce her to the palace. He called all the workers together and told them that this was the new maid, and her name was Roan. The heroine felt very embarrassed because the prince himself introduced her, and this could have aroused suspicion. At the same time, Chartis hugged the girl in a strange way and said that she would help him now, and he asked others to be attentive to her. Rosentine, aka Roan, blushed at these words and had many questions in her head. Of course, the workers, who knew their boss's character well, were very surprised by the prince's actions. They whispered and didn't understand where it came from. The girl even realized that this reaction of the other servants was quite logical and natural. So she began to suspect whether His Highness had done it on purpose. With a sly look, as if mocking, Chartis asked the new maid if everything was okay. Roan was unpleasantly surprised by his actions and did not understand whether he was going to continue working with her like this. When the evil Maureen began to threaten her that she would not get any food today until she did all the work, the girl realized that all this was the consequence of how the prince had treated her before. The poor girl was doing the laundry and began to think about what she should do next to avoid making another mistake. She was worried that the clever maids had already guessed everything, especially the most important one, Maureen. Roan mentally characterized the time and events that were happening now. It is now a crucial period when Chartis wants to take the place of his ailing brother and become crown prince. And it is during this dangerous period that the prince brings a new maid to the palace, which can cause a lot of suspicion among others. So she decided to be patient and watch. But suddenly, Maureen lost her temper again. She accused Roan of being silent all the time and not working to her full potential. The girl was also angry. She just wanted to perform her duties quietly and calmly. But, unfortunately, she noticed that in both the world and this one, she was constantly being interfered with and provoked. So this time, I decided not to tolerate it, even though I've always been good at it. Chartis had assured her the day before that he could let her into the palace only as a personal servant, but unfortunately, he could not promise her more. Roan saw the basket of laundry that Maureen was doing. Instantly, she came up with a plan to teach that headmaid a lesson. She believes that others could have suffered from her unjust actions. She realized that she could do anything and go unpunished, unlike others. The heroine mentally felt sorry for Maureen because she was still trying to work hard, but she had to put the impudent woman in her place. Satisfied with her work, Roan decided to go out and eat. She walked around the entire palace and noted that it was the first time she had seen its entire territory, because when she was here as a guest, she had not been everywhere. Roan asked the guard who met her on the way where to find the maids' restrooms. He kindly began to explain to her where to go. Walking down the hall, Roan overheard the ghosts talking. They discussed the news that almost everyone had already heard. It was about a cabinet for jewelry from the legends that Count Herman had found. They also noted that only Renan still does not know what it is about. The heroine realized that she needed to continue listening to their conversation because it was about Herman. It was in this county that Chartis went to sign a secret agreement a few days ago. The ghost men continued to discuss this ivory jewelry cabinet, which was also extremely valuable. One of them was unpleasantly surprised that another unnecessary thing had been bought at the palace for a lot of money. Then one ghost hastened to deny that this cabinet was made of Mura's ivory. Roan, who was still listening, was shocked by what she heard. To her surprise, does Mur really exist? The man suggested that Herman probably wanted to give the cabinet to one of the princes. At the same time, he was disappointed, because he had been looking for such a precious thing for a long time. The ivory of Mura was a legendary object known to every inhabitant of Akrana. According to the legend, a long time ago, a fisherman called Mura wandered the South Sea and received a treasure from God. Mura's beloved was ill at the time. According to the stories, this treasure was made of ivory and had a magic medicine that could cure any disease. Then Roan wondered, if all this was true, how did Herman manage to find such a treasure? But at the same time, the girl had strange feelings. Events have coincided so well that right now one crown prince is ill, and an assassination attempt is being prepared against the other. She had doubts that this ivory of Mura might be for the crown prince, and then she would not be able to save Chartis. The heroine panicked, but managed to calm herself down in time. Roan began to think logically. The fact was that Herman belonged to the faction of the second prince, Chartis, and he had no motive to help the crown prince. Then she approached the ghost men and asked them in a very steady voice how they were doing. Everyone was very surprised. Finally, they realized that they were looking at the cheeky Arjun, as they called her. The ghost began to lie about not having seen the girl for a long time and even missing her, and Roan concluded that she needed to continue to skillfully disguise herself. The creatures chattered that they were glad to see her. The girl thanked them for their nice words and asked where she could find something to eat. Then a kind maid gave her so much food that she could hardly carry it. In her mind, she mentally told the woman to call her if she needed any help. Her happiness with the food did not last long. She saw a man who surprised her. She turned to the gentleman and asked if he had any business with her. With a sly look, the young man asked Roan what she was doing here. At the same time, he addressed her as a maid personally hired by His Highness. The heroine asked who he was and assumed that he must be Prince Chartis's assistant. Couldn't the man understand how she recognized him? The girl replied that he had exactly the same expression on his face as Costan's when he was being joked about. Her second criterion was that she noticed that the gentleman had high-quality clothes made by a skilled tailor. But the heroine added that at the same time, the clothes are different from those worn by aristocrats. She was also able to recognize that the clothes were made of expensive fabrics from the Ura house, which were specially made for the nobles of the imperial family. Finally, the heroine confidently said, as if she had given it away, that she had become Chartis's maid only 2 days ago. The stranger lowered his head guiltily and asked him to forgive him. The young gentleman said that the girl was very perceptive, as he had been told, and said that his name was Lucin. Roan also introduced herself. She thought to herself that he would hardly be able to recognize her, no matter how much he was a subject of the prince. At the same time, the young man asked her if she was looking for any clues now. The heroine became excited because she thought he might know the purpose of her stay. All this led her to believe that Lucin was not in a normal relationship with Chartis. She thought Hostin was stupid, but at the same time the second prince took him with him to a secret deal with Herman. So she decided that he trusted him, and he trusts Lucin, so they are both too close to Chartis. Roan replied that now she was only looking for food, because someone had deprived her of it. The next event takes place within the walls of the palace. Lucin and Roan entered His Highness's chambers. The man turned to the prince and said that he had fulfilled his order and brought a maid who was under his protection. Chartis noticed a loaf of bread hidden in the girl's apron. With the look of a great master, he noted that the girl was so fit that she would not die of hunger. The heroine was very angry and mentally called him a poisonous snake, because it was by his grace that she found herself in this situation. Chartis said ironically that he was worried about her. Then an interesting dialogue took place between the young people. Roan said that even animals tend to store food before winter. The prince pretended to be surprised and said that he could only think of small rodents. Before bringing the girl to the prince, Lucen promised her that His Highness would show her the letter. Finally, as the heroine had hoped, Chartis started looking for something in the office. The letter, as told, was behind the eagle statue in the third drawer of the bookcase on the right. Chartis found him, and everyone froze in anticipation. Roan received the letter in her hands and began to read it with interest. It was about the Empire's favorite month. They also mentioned the sedum plant, which bloomed outside the window every night. All this led her to believe that it was a love letter. She also identified the seal as belonging to Almut County. Chartis asked the maid if she recognized the seal. He added that it was made with the help of a spell. The girl looked puzzled. She was surprised by the fact that the letter to the imperial family of Cartizan contained a spell, and she voiced it. Chartis did not hesitate to explain. He said that at a time when the empire was weak, to prevent espionage by Bishutean, all secret correspondence was conducted with the help of spells. This was the right of only members of the imperial family. Roan concluded that the imperial family was the only exception to Cartesian law prohibiting witchcraft. The girl began to read out. Someone secretly approached His Highness and apologized for having to warn him that something bad was about to happen at Princess Abentua's birthday ball. The informant wrote that his maid had been ordered by the customer to switch the glasses of the two princes. That's why he asked me to be careful with the golden glass. Roan carefully studied the contents of the letter, and some details aroused her suspicions. All this was similar to the first attempted assassination attempt on the prince. The ghost said that the customer would stop at nothing, but in her opinion, Almoda's maid was an exception and was treated quite differently. The heroine thought that there was some uncertainty in the letter. She could not believe that such a thoughtful person could make such a mistake. After reading it, Roan said she could make a prediction. She assumed that the Count was referring to the goblets, namely the two sacred goblets. According to her, it was from these glasses that Chartis and the Crown Prince were supposed to drink, and it was in the Crown Prince's glass that the poison was supposed to be. She also added that if they were switched at the ball, the poison would end up in His Highness's vessel. It is known from history that the imperial Cartizan family held a ceremony every 10 years to celebrate the birthday of a member of the family. The sacred golden goblet was filled with grape wine, which was a symbol of imperial power. With the permission of the emperor himself, this glass was to be drunk by the direct heir to the throne. It was an ancient rite that was supposed to promote the prosperity of the imperial Cartizan family. Roan was worried that the prince was obligated to drink his glass even though he knew it was poison. The client knew all this and was well prepared. While she was thinking, she was ordered to continue talking. The girl skillfully analyzed the events. She said that if His Highness did drink the glass of poison, Count Almut, whose maid had done all this, would automatically become a suspect. That is why he wrote this letter, as if to be proactive. So the customer had another plan. If the Crown Prince is sick and will not be present at the ball, His Highness will drink his glass and there will be no suspicion. The mastermind of the assassination attempt chose Almut's maid for a reason. And this letter, all of this will allow the girl to shift the blame for the prince's death onto Count Almut. Then Roan said strange things. She assumed that there was no glass without poison. It was added to 2 glasses at once. This news puzzled the second prince a bit, and he asked if they really wanted to assassinate both brothers. Count Almut, upon learning that his maid was an accomplice in the crime, wrote this letter to clear himself of any suspicion. But at the same time, the heroine thought about what would have happened if Prince Chartis had died. In this case, the Count's letter would have become the main evidence of the preparation of the murder of a member of the imperial family. The girl also wondered why the Crown Prince's faction and the Crown Prince himself were constantly involved in this case. The night before the ghosts, Roan asked them some more questions that bothered her. But right now, she dared to ask His Highness one important question. Surprisingly enough, he immediately agreed. Then the girl asked who Mura's ivory was kept for. Chartis was surprised that she even knew about her existence, and asked if it could be considered witchcraft. Some time ago, there was a commotion in the palace because His Highness had once again lost consciousness. Prince Chartis had a special mission. He received the golden blessing. His brother, the Crown Prince, on the other hand, was cursed and had to die sometime later. In the current conversation, Prince Chartu confessed to Rohan that Mura's ivory was meant for him. He added that Herman had found it, and he was going to hand it over to his brother in the near future. The heroine thought to herself that she was right in her guesses. If she does not save Chartis from death, Esvar will recover, which will lead to a dramatic change in the political situation in Cartazan. But the girl was in a melancholy mood. She noticed Chardas's gaze and could see something so good in it. That's the look she gets when she thinks about her family, and especially about court. The heroine quickly pushed these thoughts about Chardas Cartazan away. She realized that they were bound only by a common desire to survive. But she didn't like the feelings he gradually began to evoke in her. Lucen, who had been listening to all this, suggested the idea that maybe we should just find the maid who was preparing the assassination attempt. Roan immediately dismissed the idea. After all, the customer will get rid of all the evidence and try to escape. Therefore, in her opinion, it was necessary not only to prevent the murder, but also to find the main instigator. The girl continued to think logically and analyze everything. She concluded that this whole situation with the attempted assassination of the prince could only be beneficial to the crown prince. She appealed to His Highness and asked him to send a secret letter to Count Almat. The purpose of the message was to have the maid, who had received the poison order, watched while she was at the princess's birthday ball. Early in the morning, the sounds of a metal blade clashing could be heard in the palace. Prince Kostan's humble servant was ordered to prepare all the necessary attributes for training and was kept in the dark. The second prince was skillful with a sword. His partner in this case was Roan. The man warned her that it was not an easy task and that she should not think she could handle it easily, especially in the morning. When the girl was once again defeated by the prince's service, he recommended that she change her tactics. The tired heroine admitted that she had never even dreamed of learning how to control a sword. Then Chardas decided to calm her down a bit. He said that even experienced swordsmen have a hard time with the bayonet. He added that even knights are more skillful with a rapier. He turned to Roan and warned her that she should not just learn how to swing a sword, but how to use it to crush the enemy. Prince said that threats and deception can be used. Continuing the training, he also advised that she should not hesitate to mislead the enemy, thereby gaining time. The girl was a bit puzzled. She complained about her fate, because now she had to cope with the best swordsman in the entire empire. In the middle of the night, Chardas entered the girl's room and ordered Roan to get up immediately. Roan was very unhappy with this insolence. But 3 days before that, some events happened. The second prince summoned Roan to his room. She was accompanied by Lucien, who said that he had received a reply from Count Almat. The prince began to read the letter and noted that the girl was right, because it was the maid who would be handling the glass. The letter also said that the customer would definitely send his man to the ball to keep an eye on the victim, and to see for himself that the victim would definitely die. At the time, Lucien himself suggested that if the client learned firsthand that the assassination attempt had not taken place, he would immediately want to get rid of the maid. Everyone present came to the conclusion that the instigator knew for sure that Chardas was a skilled and strong warrior. Therefore, he realizes that ordinary poison can be completely ineffective for him. It is possible that he will use some special poison that will not even leave traces. The only solution was to catch this person who would be watching. Lucien thought about it and asked how they could do it. Then Roan confidently said that she would take on this difficult task. Lucien was nervous. The girl was quick to explain that she was better suited for the role because she was a simple maid whom no one had yet gotten to know. The prince's advisor replied that their common enemy was an experienced assassin, and it takes a skilled warrior to capture it. So he added that they could not let her go on her own. Roan said that there would be many witnesses at the ball, and it was unlikely that the enemy would make any noise. At the same time, she suggested that she probably wouldn't be able to detain him herself, but she would force him to comply with their demands. Lucien wanted to object, but he didn't have time to open his mouth. The girl continued to argue that she was their only option to do so. She said that she would use witchcraft to find out when and how the poison would be poured. She also expressed her desire that she should be the one to deal with the spy. The counselor asked if she had a sword. The heroine replied that she only knew how to defend herself. Then the prince calmly agreed to her participation in this case. Lucien appealed to His Highness and tried to dissuade him, as he saw the danger in it. Prince Chardas assured her that she could be taught everything. Then His Highness added that he would personally teach Rohan how to use a sword. But instead, he asked me to accept one condition. The iconic ball in honor of the princess's birthday has finally begun. Lucien and Roan attended it as staff. They stood steadfastly and looked at the guests. The man coughed and reminded me that everything would happen today. The girl confirmed. Then the young man asked her if she was mentally prepared. In response, he heard the girl's rather nervous voice saying that she would manage somehow. Roan asked if he had managed to sort out the wine. The prince's advisor replied that he had ordered his replacement. I was also surprised to learn how she manages to scroll through it all now. The heroine replied that she would like to keep it a secret. In fact, she had done something the night before. Roan met the ghosts who lived in the palace and asked them to help. She told them to keep an eye on everyone who comes in and out of the wine warehouse. In response, the ghosts tried to ask the girl what was going on. She confessed to them that someone had to add poison to the wine barrel, and it has to happen tonight at midnight. She warned Rannon that the main thing to remember was this particular barrel of wine. Later, she noted that Rannon had done a good job. Roan was wondering what else to do when she saw a woman among the guests at the ball. It was the same maid of Count Almat. The heroine noticed that her hands were shaking. She did not deceive herself that she was not scared or worried at that moment. Lucen also thought that now the girl, despite her special talents, was in a rather dangerous situation that could cost her her life. He began to wonder if she had taken on too much. The young man wanted to protect the girl, so he told her that it was not too late to give up everything. The girl thought about it. Roan frankly admitted that she did not want to trust her fate to anyone, so she had to do everything herself. And in a very calm voice, without any emotion, she added that she would not stop, no matter what it took. At that moment, Lucen remembered their first meeting. He mentally noted that the girl looked very sophisticated and seemed weak, but in fact had a very strong spirit. Soon after, the ballroom was filled with cheers. The emperor addressed the guests and said that he was extremely pleased to be present at the ceremony today with such glorious families of the empire. He added that he was pleased that they had all come to wish his sister Abentua a happy birthday. The emperor then invited Abentua to begin the ceremony and ordered the servants to bring a golden goblet. The sister addressed His Highness and said that she was honored. The servant did not hesitate to bring a tray with a glass filled with red wine. Roan was closely watching everything that was happening and noticed that she was now holding the famous golden goblet. Soon after, it was announced that His Highness Prince Chartreuse Cartizan would arrive. He bowed low to the emperor and wished him a long reign. His Highness was pleased to see him and announced the beginning of the ceremony. The emperor raised a golden goblet and made a majestic speech. He wished that the great son Akrana would be blessed. He also added that their empire would always be accompanied by all kinds of benefits, such as prosperity and wealth. He then turned to Princess Abentua and compared her to the root and vein of Cartizan. He asked her to add eternity to eternity. Prince Chartis kissed his aunt's hand according to the rules of the ceremony. In response, she asked him to accept a golden goblet from the emperor, which would mean his blessing of the eternal existence of the imperial family. Roan was extremely excited at this point. Chartis Cartizan drank wine by the glass and said that he was adding eternity to eternity. The heroine knew that the wine with the poison was hidden elsewhere. All the guests watched this majestic ceremony closely. Each of the interested parties watched the prince swallow the drink. The maid also watched and instantly changed her face. Roan was really hoping and waiting for that spy to show up to get rid of the inept maid. Finally, Chartis Cartizan emptied the golden glass. He said he was sending blessings from the gold of Abentu. The heroine noticed a man in the crowd holding a wrapped object in his hand. She guessed that he was the man she had been waiting for. At that very moment, he came close to the maid. Roan realized that she had to act without hesitation. She decided to catch him red-handed. At this point, the spy came even closer to Almat's maid. Very quietly, almost in his ear, he whispered to the victim not to hold it against him because he was only following orders. Suddenly, he saw a shadow behind him. Now someone was trying to kill him. The man managed to say only one word when he felt the coldness of the metal on his neck. Desperate, Roan ordered him not to move. At one point, the stranger even trembled with fear and was very surprised to realize that his attacker was a girl. The girl was not confused. She told the spy not to make a fuss because no one needed to attract the emperor's attention and ordered him to follow her humbly and quietly. The man looked confused because he had not received instructions on how to act in this case. They went out into the night courtyard of the palace. The man, who still had a saber at his throat, dared to ask who she was and how she knew. Roan said, with a sly look, that she had noticed he was confused because she was not part of his plans. She asked him why he was so scared, because she was just an ordinary maid. At that moment, the heroine herself was clenching her fists because she was very nervous and afraid. Mentally, she began to calm herself down and persuade herself to do what she had been taught. The spy mentally repeated that it was just an ordinary maid.